group of recording in progress. A group of Montessori visionaries decided to get together to celebrate the birthday of Dr. Montessori. That was the big anniversary, the 150th. And we are still living the benefits and the legacy of that great occasion. As you know, today we are again together as we connect, challenge, and celebrate each other. And today, as we have another look at the role of the adult within our Montessori community. I don't know how many of you were able to watch the recording again of the wonderful panel, and I hope you were reignited and re-inspired. So what will happen in this session today is we're going to continue the vision of Montessori everywhere. And today we are going to connect and form a new community. What will happen is that we will have after I finish my introduction, and Anna will look after all the tech pieces. And Dr. Lucy Golden is going to be our guide, who is going to get us to think about the role of the adult. So can you please rename yourself if you wish to put your pronouns, if you wish to put your age group, and then Anna will organize us into different groupings so that we can have a rich discussion together. Before we start that second part of the session and I introduce Lucy, I'd like to acknowledge the land in which I am sitting. I'm here together with my daughter, Andy Luka, that many of you know. And Andy and I are in a city called Toronto. It was inhabited for 10,000 years before it was colonized. And it has been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. The land is still home to diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. It is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the prior contested agreement. The word Toronto comes from Caronto, which is a Mohawk word, meaning there are trees standing in the water. At least that's one of the versions. And thank you, Andy, for more details. What I'd like to say is that my family has also been estranged from our other lands, sometimes in forced migrations, sometimes voluntary migrations. And today, as we are here in Toronto, we benefit and we are very grateful for the social system that exists now, although we are, I guess we're also suffering through the damage that has been done to First Nations people. So we're now going through our own reckoning in Canada, and I do want to acknowledge that because it is important. And it is relevant, I believe, to our discussion about the role of the adult. So as in Canada, we reckon with the great hurtful damage caused to First Nations, we're also looking into reconciliation and future hope. So thank you for that. If you have anything to add to this through your own land, and if you want to share with us what you are grateful for and where you are, please do so in the chat. So thank you to those of you who were able to redistribute some funds to the Black Montessori Education Fund. They're doing great work, important work in these days. And I'd like to, when do we introduce Lucy? I'm sorry. Anna, should I hand it back to you for tech? And then I'll look after Lucy. Thank you.
All right, so during tonight's meeting, we're going to ask that for your technology, you keep your microphones muted so that we can hear our presenter, and until we get into our breakout rooms where we're going to discuss the topic of the evening, the role of the adult. We'll also, I just want to remind you, as you heard, I forgot to start recording until we were already going. I apologize, Regina, but we are recording tonight's session and it will be shared with others who wanted to attend but weren't able to be with us this evening. That recording will be paused while we're in the breakout rooms, just so you're aware, and then it'll resume when we come back to debrief and reflect on our discussions. If you have questions as you go along through this evening's session, please feel free to put them into the chat at any point, and then as it is appropriate to address them, Regina or one of us will help to address that. And we encourage cameras on, especially when we get into the breakout rooms. If it's possible for you in your context to put your camera on. I know we're all a little Zoom tired, but it is so lovely to be able to see each other in these times when we can't be physically with as many of our colleagues as we would like. We also ask that when you get put into breakout rooms after Lucy's orientation for our evening, after her reflections, that you keep track of your breakout room number so that if you end up getting bounced out of the internet, that you can come back in and join us back into the same breakout room that you are a part of. And we'll go from there. All right. And so back to you, Regina.
Thank you so much, Anna. I totally trust you with all the tech pieces of this. And after having welcomed you, I am now super pleased and proud and honored to introduce Dr. Lucy Golden Canzoneri, or Canzoneri Golden. I've seen both, so welcome, Lucy. Lucy was born in Colombia, and yet she grew up in Queens, New York. And Lucy is now with Coral Reef Charter School. And Lucy comes to us with a lot of wonderful background as an educator of children, as an educator of adults. She's worked in Harlem, New York, and Lucy is a Buddhist, and I know this guides a lot of her thoughts and brings her a lot of strength. She is also passionate about global citizenship and about social issues. Lucy is a great believer in increasing diversity and opportunities for everybody. And she does that through work with children and adults. And Lucy, I'm excited and I can't wait to hear what you're going to share with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here. And, you know, I'm always so thrilled each time that we have this opportunity to gather together and to really refocus on these important dialogues, right? This is the third of the fourth series that so many of the wonderful people that are here brought together. First, you know, discussing the role of the child, the environment, and now the adult, and later into the community. And I think as a Montessorian, right, and as a person who, you know, has a spiritual practice, just really understanding the interconnectedness and the interrelationship in all of those roles, and how some of these common themes that are popping up in these dialogues that were happening, you know, keep coming up. And it's no coincidence that the same kinds of themes, I think, keep coming up, right? So in today's discussion, where we're focusing on the role of the adult, many of us here, you know, obviously work in some capacity with children, right? So we have had to be trained in some kind of way. Most of us here are coming from the Montessori pedagogy, but I'm sure that there's others as well. I myself was trained in Montessori and was a Montessori teacher for about 8 years before in public school, before I became a co-director and co-founder of the first public Montessori charter school in the state of Florida in 1998. I co-founded it with my business partner, Dr. Juliet King, who is now currently 2022 American Montessori Society Living Legacy. So, you know, I'm very proud of the fact that we have been able to, you know, have this co-partnership together and really do this very important work. I think all of us know that it's said time and time again, Dr. Montessori talked about, you know, how it's really the work of the adult, the constant work in spiritual preparation, in preparation of the adult. We hear this so often. And so I want to kind of talk about a quote that she started with, where she says, quote, "It's not enough for the teacher to love the child. She must first love and understand the universe. She must prepare herself and truly work at it." So I think this sort of encapsulates the fact that this work is ongoing. Those of us who are here are working towards humanity. We are working with the spirit of the child, the spirit of life. And with this kind of noble work, it is a continuum. It never stops. And so it's not a disconnect, oh, I'm the adult, you're the child. we're constantly doing what we call our own human revolution. We are revolutionizing ourselves through our practices of observation within ourselves, through our practices of spirituality, through our practices of recognizing our own biases and limitations, and really through this pedagogy that is dynamic, right? That we have these incredible roots of the Montessori pedagogy, but where we also can really honestly look at what needs to change, what needs to transform, so that we in fact are doing the work that we are setting out to be. So in listening to the conversation of these very distinguished guests that spoke about the role of the child, there were several themes, I believe, that that came up. And one of the themes when we're talking about the preparation of the adult, which I think I have said already, is that this work is ongoing, right? Is also that when we're looking at the adult, we're looking at all the adults in the environment, right? So it's not just the teachers, it is everyone in that environment of the child, including their families, right? And really having that kind of respect for the families that we are working with, and the partnership and the ability to bring people in and to create community. And what does that mean and what does that look like? Another quote that really stuck to me that I really believe helps sort of enlighten this conversation that Dr. Montessori said was, "Not in the service of any political or social creed should the teacher work, but in the service of the complete human being, able to exercise in freedom a self-discipline, will, and judgment, unperverted by prejudice and undistorted by fear." And I think that those words are so incredibly powerful, because in this discussion, we talked about, the panel talked about, right, the importance of having trainings that are really preparing the role of the adult, right? Preparing the teacher to do this transformational work. But what is that transformational work? And although Montessori talked about this preparation of the teacher, and she talked about these in the context of a spiritual awakening and a recognizing of one's own inner biases, how does one do that, right? And I think that's sort of the question that we have. So there was so many wonderful dialogues and exchanges that happen in perspectives, because we had this gentleman, from New Zealand that is actually working with adults, post-Montessori educators, and really doing a very interesting kind of training, right, that goes beyond what we would think in a normal graduate program. And then we had this woman from South Africa, a white woman, that was talking about, the different perspectives and working and bringing community, as a Montessorian in a private sector, but living in a country like South Africa that has many different people there, including the indigenous people of South Africa. And then, Dr. Aker, who I thought was just so incredibly brilliant in the way that she really talked about why we're here today, right? And I think it loops back to, recognizing that we all need to make a commitment to address social inequities, right? Because if we are in fact doing the work of humanity, which is working with the child to unleash that potential while working with our own humanity, we have to be able to be active participants in recognizing that we need to make change. And so I like that quote where Dr. Montessori said, unperverted by prejudice and undistorted by fear. That's so important, because this work takes courage. We cannot be scared. We cannot be fearful of our own weaknesses. We cannot be fearful of our own biases and our own prejudices. It's only when we are able to face them up front can we in fact transform that. And if we expect to transform, to do transformative work, we have to be able to have that kind of courage to do something. So we're here because we know that there's a need to really support Montessori in a way that is going to be inclusive of all people, right? And we're really here to start amplifying and supporting the voices of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, be them from the Americas, be that from Africa or from Asia or from wherever they hail. So we're here because we want to do something. So this is such a noble opportunity that we have, right now, to really support organizations like the Black Educators Fund, and making active donations, and really looking at your schools and saying, what can we do, right? One of the other things that Dr. Akar really talked about was really having the opportunity to have these dynamic dialogues with people around you and partnerships, right? So if we're just doing this work in isolation, right, we're really not going to see that dynamic transformation happen, because as human beings, we are beings that need to connect, that have the ability to connect with others. We don't live in isolation. So when we're doing this work and having the opportunity to really have these dynamic conversations in our school, what, can really, I think, perpetuate something deeper than just a nice thought or a nice conversation. It can make us start to become creative in making action plans to say, how can my school, really support teachers from the global majority? What am I doing to make my student body more diverse? What am I actually, what are the action steps that I'm taking? Look at my school population, I can look at my school population and I can say, okay, 88% of my students hail from the global majority. How many of the teachers also hail from that? And what are we doing to send those teachers to training? How can I facilitate? How can I make it easier for someone who may not have the resources? When I heard the story about Dr. Akar and how she, was she happened to be intellectually a gifted child, gifted, I know we all have gifts, but obviously she was very advanced. Yet because she wasn't guided with the opportunities, because they weren't present in her circle, she had to go through a journey that took her a lot longer to get to where she is today. How many kids are like that in our classrooms? Or how many kids do we know? Or how many kids do we not know that are losing these opportunities to really be a part of Montessori? So I really encourage you all to use these conversations, not to make yourself feel good, but to do something about it, right? To really have an active action plan, because we're coming towards, the last segment, the last leg of this, which is the community. And if this is nothing but making ourselves feel good and patting ourselves on the back because, hey, we all believe in Montessori, then I think we've missed the boat, right? We have to have courage and we have to have compassion into action for ourselves and for the sake of humanity. So I really, I'm really excited about an opportunity that Andy actually is going to be a part of that we're going to have again, because I think that some of the things that sometimes we miss in our training session is that ability to really understand that without a spiritual practice, whatever your spiritual practice, I'm not telling you what to believe in, but if you don't have a spiritual practice, it's really difficult to get out of your head. And this is not head work. This is work of the heart, right? So we're going to be speaking soon on November 20th, I believe, at AMI, and we're going to be talking about different spiritual practices and how that really helps us as adults do this work. And so I want to loop back into that, because I really, truly believe, the world needs this more than ever. And, I hope, again, that through our discussions today, we are inspired to actually make change. We are inspired to do something, whether we're in Europe or Canada or South America or wherever we're at, the United States, to really, look and make active change to make the world a better place, to make the world more inclusive, to really give Montessori an opportunity to truly, in fact, be a global education. Thank you so much for allowing me, to share these words. And I look forward to hearing your wonderful dialogues. Thank you.
And Lucy, thank you very much. This has really set us up for great conversations. We do have 3 questions that I am trying to put in the chat. Having heard Lucy, though, you may or may not need those questions. The questions are, what do we mean by the prepared adult? What role do our biases play in the spiritual preparation of the adult? And how can we create learning spaces for adults that celebrate the diversity of the world? So in your groups, if you want to follow these questions, those are guides, but we also have heard some very powerful words from our guide that may want us to guide our own discussions differently. So thank you so much. And thank you, Anna, for putting us into our breakouts. We will come back at around 6:45 to give us time for a group debrief and for Lucy to give us some final words. Thank you so much.
Welcome back.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. Our time is a little bit limited because Lucy is going to have to go. So this is a time when we usually give you a couple of minutes to reflect. So I'll shorten that to, I'm sorry, but what, 30 seconds? So a quick reflection, if you want to put something in the chat about what stood out to you in terms of highlights. And we're going to have a very brief report from the groups. I'm going to ask you to really keep it to 1 or 2 minutes so that then we can hear from Lucy again. Okay, so Tammy, would you like to start us?
Sure, and I will keep it very brief. Thank you, Regina. Our group started out with a beautiful story of a 0 to 3 community in Australia where the children were offering an acknowledgement to the first peoples of their land. And the demonstration of it was quite profound and I would say transformational. We talked a lot about love. And love is part of our own preparation, love of self, love of the situation, a radical kindness towards others, the environment, and of course to other adults, and how our love is in relation to all things. We also talked about love as a verb and an action and a choice, and the environment as an expression or manifestation of our preparation and the courage that it takes that Lucy talked about to look at our conditioning and the humility to do something about it. There it is.
Thank you. I'm not sure who was facilitator in another group.
I was one.
Richard.
Shall I go now? Cool.
Yes,
thank you, everyone. We started by responding to the idea of challenge that Lucy had set us, and the idea that we actually need to take action and that we don't just want to talk first, we want to do things. So thank you for that, Lucy. It's always a good reminder. We started with around just actually getting to know each other a little bit better because, hey, part of the preparation of an adult is to not do it in isolation, right? So fantastic to make some new connections within the group, and that's part of it, is to always be working within community. I think that's preparation of the adult right there. Talking about finding a way to love each child, and we had some great words from Mandy about just the patience that is needed and just the kind of the trust that is needed, and then into some other words about how sometimes we know that, but it's hard to do. And so some little tricks there about how to actually tap into those virtues that we know we need to bring. And of course, that is about examining and being aware of ourselves. Then we sort of lurched towards the bias type thing. And so there was that kind of aspect of, yep, got to examine our own biases, but then we've also got to be looking for those institutional structural biases that exist, and the settler colonial mindset and the settler colonial reality that many of us are working within, in fact, really, I guess we're all working within, has got to be part of that examination process. And realizing that it is not just imbued into us, it's not just imbued into the way our societies work, but there are aspects within Montessori itself that we need to look at. And I brought up one of my bugbears, which is about the idea that civilization and agricultural revolution are the same thing, and that we must remember that the agricultural revolution was not when civilization started, and does not have the monopoly on what civilization is. And that's a big part of some of our charts and our stories and our work with the adolescents. So we've got to be a bit careful about that. And also, of course, in our resources that we use, and Hemi brought that up really well, is that, you know, we've just got to be critically analytical of everything that we bring to the children, and be searching, examining, and challenging those biases within those as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Great overview. And was there a third group? Sarah, can you do it in 1 minute?
I could do it really quickly. Humility, challenging ourselves. We did talk about that fact that to be able to do this work, you need your community, and that, you know, situations like this where we get to share with like-minded people are really, really helpful, and that sometimes we can be in isolation in our own communities. So that sort of challenges us to get out there and actually find those people that can support us on that journey together. Obviously, with the whole idea that the pandemic that different families are dealing with, or different directors are dealing with in different ways, we talked about that need of the prepared adult as the parent, and that we really need to be supporting that community of the family, whatever that looks like, so that they can be there for the child. And it's about supporting them because the child has all they need. It's really that they need to have that environment, that support to allow them to follow the journey that they need to. So yeah, I think humility and challenging ourselves were the two big ones, and also the care of self. That if we want to do this work, then we really need to find the time and space. I think a lot of us are very good at giving, but we also need to learn how to give to ourselves as well. So our buckets are full. How quick was that, Regina?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wonder if anybody else has a one-word response that you want to give. Thank you to our three facilitators for the report back. Yes, put it together. Any other quick thought that perhaps you want to share with Lucy or from your group? Sarah?
I might be opening a can of worms, but Lucy, you wrote up about the materializing transformation. I would have loved to have had time to be able to go that one in a little bit more depth. Wasn't a 2-word or a sentence that you could just give us to that?
Well, let's give everyone an opportunity who wants to join in the words, and then I'm going to touch base. And actually, it wasn't my concept, it was one of the speakers, but it really struck a chord. So maybe if everyone else would like an opportunity to share first, and we'll loop back to that.
Okay, if I may say something, I was just thinking while everyone was talking now, that this issue about diversity, embracing people and children, diversity and the way of love, I think as Montessorians, we may start thinking about going beyond the classroom, because I'm thinking how many children are in the Montessori community, you know. So Montessori said, look, peace, creating peace is the work of education. And education is not limited to the school system. In our families, in the home, in the community, media, if we can have some influence in these spheres, I think the world will be a better place in terms of embracing, because Montessori talks so much about equality and diversity. Look at the cultural materials. A child in Nigeria, I'm in Nigeria, you're learning about the Chinese children, you learn about Asia, you're learning about the different things, and showing the children that we are one. Humanity is one first. You know, before race, before differences in color, before, like I tell my children, I said, look, we are made from one humus. We only have different colors. You know, same blood in, you know, across races. And so, you know, it's such a beautiful thing when if we can pass this word beyond the Montessori community, you know, so that the world will get to hear this, that the child, you know, the child is the child, whether at home, in the community, or in the school. So my thoughts are, it's very beautiful, this thing about diversity. You know, how do we help children? How do we show the light to the next generation that the way of peace is the best way? Embracing diversity, the different cultures, religion, whatever it is. We are one humanity before religion. We're one humanity before, you know. Those are just my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Abby.
I want to jump in and restate the words of Dr. Lucy about revolutionizing ourselves. I love that, and thank you for that concept.
So thank you, everyone. I'm just going to sort of try to loop everything that's been said. Ochuko Prudence, I think you really hit it on the nail when you really talked about how this really has to extend beyond the classroom, right? Beyond the classroom community, to really know where we are, where community are we in, and to really get to build ties in our community. This whole concept of materializing abstraction was not something I said, it was something that one of the panelists talked about, because when we're doing this work, right, it's beyond just presenting the way that we would present a concept, right, a material, a math concept. We are actually doing that. We're materializing an abstract concept. Well, when we're talking about this whole concept of revolutionizing ourselves with Montessori pedagogy within our communities and the community at large, it really boils down to our behavior, right? How we're able to demonstrate these concepts that we're talking about in our actions, in our policies, in our interactions with our staff, our colleagues, our assistants, how we speak to one another, how we engage with our parents. Are we providing opportunities for our parents to be heard? Are we providing opportunities for them, even if we don't know the answers to maybe their questions, for them to really be able to reflect in their questions? And I really like this concept about giving everyone time and consideration to prepare themselves. That really preparation means calling back within. And when we're able to give ourselves that time, ourselves, our students, our parents, our colleagues, our community, then we can gather that wisdom that is internally within us, that is part of the laws of the universe in whatever spiritual belief you have. It's there, right? And it's providing that time. And so many of us in this century that we're living in the fast pace, we cut ourselves from that time. Yet we expect to have that time in the classroom for our students, yet we cut ourselves and the adults from allowing that time to reflect. As Andy was saying, you know, to be able to have that feedback and that humility through these dynamic dialogues, right? But this requires time. So I think that I would like to end by saying, let's all really be conscientious of the fact that we need the time, because this is not instantaneous, this is ongoing. And we need to provide ourselves and everyone that we interact with in our environment the time to reflect and to go deep in, because this work is not superficial. It's not on the surface. It's going deep. That's why we're so attracted to Montessori, because it is going in, but at the same time coming out, right? So it's this dynamic that we're creating while we're living, breathing, thinking, feeling. This is what we're doing. So I thank you all, and I really hope that we have an opportunity to make a small donation in whatever way we can to the Black Educators Fund. I want to, once again, ask all of you, to do that, or to, really support Black educators, Black folks that are doing this work, like Prudence, like others, on this call. So thank you so much, and I really am humbled to be here.
Lucy, thank you so much. We are very honored. I think we're inspired. I think we are ignited as we revolutionize ourselves and we give time to ourselves and each other to do deep work. Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My apologies for that quick music bite. I was trying to find the website for the Montessori Everywhere Earth project. To remind, if you don't know about it, it's easy enough to look it up, and I don't want to make a lot of noise anymore. Montessori Everywhere Earth project, from September to November, children around the world, both in families, in homes, and in schools, participating in solving and making this world and this earth an even better place, for the idea of more than sustainability, for the idea of loving the earth. So with final words on that, thank you very much to Anna for hosting. Thank you to our facilitators, and thank you to those people in the original Montessori Everywhere team who are here today, Tammy and Andy and Heital being some of them, for having started this whole wonderful project. It's been a real pleasure to be with you tonight, or this morning, wherever you are.
Thank you, Dr. Lucy.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Nice to meet you all. See ya.
Same here, Richard. See you next time.
Yeah, love to. I'll look out for the email. Bye.
Perfect.
Okay, we're signing out.
All right. Loving you. Sending love.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regina. Bye.
Prudence, so good to see you
Thank
twice
you,
in one day.
Tammy.
Bye, Abby. Lovely meeting you.
All right. Yeah, nice meeting you. Thank you, Andy, Pam.
I have a question.